Hello and welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network. I'm Anthony DeBundo, joined as always by BJ Cunningham. Michael Leboff is out sick tonight. He just really didn't want to talk about the Fortress and the big matchup coming up this weekend for my Reds against Manchester City. And that is the highlight match of the weekend. The highlight match really, I think to this point in the season, we've got two huge matchups left. We've got Liverpool City. We've got City Arsenal coming up at the end of March, right after the international break. And those two matches are the title leverage deciders at this point. And that's where, with 11 matches to go and three teams playing at an unreal level in the last, 2 to 3 months, that's probably where the title gets decided. And we have a lot to talk about. So before we get into Liverpool City, the quote unquote game of the year, remember that Wondergoal is presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than anyone else. Every day, they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays. And they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for the biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out those boosts and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Disclaimer, you must be 21 and older. And present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, New Jersey, Ohio, and Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. BJ, your team is sitting this one out, the first of the two. We're calling the title derbies. Some are saying Liverpool City is the best current rivalry in the Prem. I tend to agree, just based on how competitive and interesting the matches have been the last 4 to 5 years. City is a slight road favorite. We are pretty confident. We were just talking before we hit record on this. We know what City is going to look like in terms of personnel and who's available. We kind of don't know what the status of Liverpool is. We assume Nunez will start. They're taking Salah to Prague on Thursday. So, maybe he plays a little bit off the bench to get his fitness back, and then is he available for a full game or just 45 minutes on Sunday? There's a lot of questions as to what the team looks like. Meanwhile, they also are traveling, have one fewer day to get ready for this compared to City, who played a very rotated team against Copenhagen in what was pretty much a walk of a Champions League match on Wednesday. The betting odds for this match, before we get into that, though, I guess we could just do the title odds. So currently at Bet365, Man City minus 120, Liverpool plus 210, Arsenal 3-1. BJ, you're holding, I think, a couple of Arsenal tickets at better numbers.
And I might be holding some more after this weekend.
Certainly, I think you're going to just keep buying Arsenal tickets. Yep. And look, they're playing great right now. They waxed big mighty Sheffield United last weekend, so they're feeling good about themselves. But yeah, I mean, those are the betting odds right now. And if you take out the VIG, it's like 49% City, 28% Liverpool, 22% Arsenal. I guess the best result for Arsenal is probably a draw.
Yep.
Or are you rooting for Liverpool?
A draw is the best result.
Right. And I think as a neutral, I'm also rooting for a draw from this will create the best title race. Although I do think, given the injury situation, maybe Liverpool needs the win more so than City. But either way, this match really is more about not losing than winning for both teams. And I think that's kind of the angle you need to take coming into it, because, so often in the Prem this year, and especially these big matches, have ended up being very high scoring. And the total sitting right around 3.25. So 3.25, a little over 3. I have it right on 3, and I'm tempted to bet the under. But again, we've watched this Prem all year, and Mo Salah, how many minutes they get out of him is a huge part of, how good is the Liverpool attack going to be? Because we saw this first meeting at the Etihad. It was an early kickoff. Most people probably didn't even watch it because it was a 7:30 Eastern time kick. It was a dead game. I mean, City created about 1.1 XG, Liverpool 0.6. City led for most of it. Liverpool really couldn't get their feet into it. And that was the front three of what I thought was their best front three. That was the Nunez, Salah, Jota front three. And they didn't do much of anything. Trent had a great goal from 25 yards into the corner to equalize and get a draw on the road, but they were not particularly good in that match. It was their second worst attacking showing of the season. And so, can Liverpool ratchet up the pressure more at Anfield? I think that's the biggest question.
I agree. And that is what it comes down to here is Liverpool, because obviously they've been playing really well lately, obviously gone through some injuries. But when they were playing at their best, it was when they were back to heavy metal football, pressing high, causing problems. You know, for the first stretch of the season, and the City match was included in it, they didn't really have a midfield in terms of ball winning that they could press with that. Then Wataru Endo comes into the team, Gravenberch comes into the team, and suddenly they do have ball winning in the midfield, and they can press high and they can cause problems. And they did that. Since the beginning of December, they have the best pass per defensive action in the Premier League. Just goes to show you how more aggressive they've been. I don't think that's the best approach given the personnel they have available for this match right here. The midfield's going to be fine, quite frankly, because Endo and Szoboszlai will be healthy. McAllister will probably start in the midfield there. No Trent, obviously, for Liverpool. So it's probably going to be Connor Bradley playing out of right back. That's a little concerning for me because, that is a area of the pitch that City kept targeting in the previous meeting. So City, I mean, we've been over this 1,000 times. Like, they want to play through the middle of the pitch, and they are going to try to do that in this match as well. What they did in the previous match is Ederson came out as a +1 in build-up as the left center back. So that allowed them to have numerical superiority when they did try to build up. And it actually caused Liverpool quite a few problems and allowed City to kind of dominate the match. They had a lot of success playing through the middle. Once they got through the first and second phase of the pressure, though, a lot of the times the ball went out wide to Doku and just got him in one-on-one situations against Trent. For the match, 42% of City's attacks came from the left side of the pitch, and Doku had the third most touches of anybody on City, which is kind of crazy when you think about how oftentimes, Rodri and Akanji and Silva touch the ball. So that's kind of where I'm going in this one, because I agree with you. If anything, I would be looking at an under here because I do think Liverpool is going to play passive. I don't think they might pick their spots to try and press, but it's not in their best interest to do so. And given the way they actually kind of stifled City in terms of limiting their chance creation in the last meeting, I think it's of their best interest to play more passive, cut off the middle of the pitch. But Doku kept getting in one-on-ones versus Trent. And in that, he attempted 17 dribbles and completed 12 of them. He went past Trent numerous times and was able to create chances with in-swinging balls up through the left, cutbacks to Haaland, to Silva. That is where City was at their best. So that's what kind of leads me in the direction of where I'm going here is one of the bets I like here is actually a prop bet for this match because I have City projected at +133. I have the total closer to 3, so I'm not in anywhere in terms of actually betting this match. I like Doku anytime assist +350 if he starts. Oscar Bob started today against Copenhagen, so my guess is had the success that they had with Doku in the previous meeting that he will start on the left. So that's really the only area I can go with this one. Yeah, it really kind of depends if Salah does play. It obviously makes
I kind of hope he does
a lot better and a lot better in transition, which is how Liverpool is going to have to play in this match and how they were successful in the previous match against City. Although they didn't create a lot of chances, a lot of times they sucked City in and they sucked, now it's going to be Stones instead of Akanji playing the role alongside Rodri. And a lot of times Akanji got sucked in to the last line and trying to overload Liverpool. And so Liverpool a lot of times got in 3v3s going in transition. And so when you have Nunez and you have Salah, that's a lot more dangerous than Nunez and Harvey Elliott. So it really depends if you want to bet Liverpool. I think if Salah plays, quite frankly. But I think the number's right. So Doku anytime assist, because I know people are going to watch this match. They want to bet this match. So Doku anytime assist +350 as he starts is really the only thing that I've looked at that I like.
Yeah, so I think you kind of saw it in the United match too. Like how easy it was for City to progress the ball through the middle, pass a Doku, and then Doku or Foden, depending on where De Bruyne went with it, and Silva. It was very easy for them. And I think there's some interesting things that have kind of tweaked under the hood because we talked about City. I think the biggest thing with City has been that their defense hasn't been as aggressive. They have not pressed as high. They have not won the ball as much. I mean, Luton Town has a lower build-up completion percentage allowed than City this year. That's just a sign of just how aggressive Luton's been, but also how passive City is. So you can possess the ball against this City team, and I think we saw in the Chelsea match when they played more of the 4-1-4-1, where remember we said before that match, Silva's not playing. It's going to be the overly aggressive team that, the one they played against Brentford in the first matchup, the one they played against against Chelsea was the 4-1-4-1 without a ton of defensive midfield ball winning outside of Rodri, just putting it all on him. But now it's different because they're playing, again, the 3-2-2-3 that made them so dominant last year. And the pieces are a little bit different. It's not Grealish, it's Doku right now because Grealish is hurt. It's not Mahrez, it's Foden who's playing those minutes out wide for them. But it's the same principle where it's Rodri and Stones sit and basically form a wall in front of the back three that they play. Kyle Walker has so much pace that he can make it work. And then they have, Akanji and Diaz as the other two, wing backs. And then Rodri can have some freedom to get forward, but he doesn't need to. And how much he goes forward kind of determines how aggressive they are. And then it's just like, oh yeah, we have Kevin De Bruyne, Phil Foden, and Erling Haaland. Like they'll figure it out. And then Doku's the outlet. And it's what turned them into a supernova last year that nobody could beat. And that's why they won the treble. That's why they won every match coming in. And, I think we've kind of on this show maybe poo-pooed City a little bit. We've said like what has gone wrong for them and where they're maybe not quite as good. But they've won 13 games and drawn 1 since coming back from the Club World Cup. Like this is a team that has put on an unreal run. That's not to discredit Liverpool because Liverpool has 1 loss in that same time frame. They've been dominant too. And like you said, I think the biggest thing is like we wondered, could Liverpool keep up the pressure and win the ball high and be good enough in midfield given all the turnover and the lack of depth and really all the injuries? They're number 1 in pass per defensive action, number 1 in preventing opponent buildup. So it's a Liverpool team that, at Anfield, we've talked about this with Arsenal, who's looked great, coming in here. Other than the Fulham match, probably I guess the Porto match. So they had a couple of hiccups, but when they went to Anfield, that was the only time where I've seen Arsenal truly unable to keep the ball under pressure. So, we've seen the City team do this time and time again. I am closer personally to playing City than I am Liverpool, just because I think there are more cracks in Liverpool. If you look at their underlying numbers, and if you look at the current situation, Mo Salah maybe comes in and Liverpool takes money. I would be okay waiting and hoping for that and then taking City against Liverpool. If I can get like a pick minus 120, 125, I think I would take it. Just because I do think that like we're at City with their best 11 available. And when that's been the case for the last 2 years, nobody can really touch them.
Well,
and so I know it's at Anfield. I know it's the fortress. It's a place where, like I have said, I never want to bet against Liverpool. I think I've done it once all year, maybe twice, and it was usually like as an inflated favorite. So it's crazy to say it, but I'm closer to City than I am to Liverpool, just because I trust their defense more, given that they have their best alignment. Silva, right, I think, is their most underrated player in the system, and Stones. And those two guys give them so much more solidity compared to like Akanji in that role, or when it's Alvarez instead of Silva.
Yeah, one more thing I'll just mention is that, why these matches are so huge, obviously in the title race and everything like that, is the Premier League is incredibly top heavy this year with the top 3, right? So it's hard for us to say, oh my gosh, City's won, 13 of their last 14 matches. That's great. Okay, well, what's happened when they played Arsenal? What happened when they played Liverpool? Like, yes, they were a little bit better than Liverpool in that previous match. The Arsenal match was the famous nobody wants to make a mistake match, and Arsenal just
should have ended -1 to -1.
Exactly. And then you just look at Liverpool. Yes, at Anfield, they only created 1 expected goal against Arsenal. I like to mention that basically all of that came off of 1 counterattack. But when they played Arsenal on the road recently, they got demolished. And Liverpool's been playing in the Europa League. They're not playing in the Champions League. Even City in the Champions League, they had Leipzig in their group, and that was it. And then they got drawn against Copenhagen here in the first round. So we haven't seen a lot of these like elite versus elite matches. So it's very hard for us, and why we are like focusing so hard on what the tactical battle is going to be rather than just what the numbers are, is because these teams like City and Liverpool and Arsenal are just beating up on everybody else. So again, I agree with you. I'm very tempted to take City here. Target price, like you said, draw no bet, -120. If you want to play the money line, target price, I'm going to go with +150 around that range. It's good enough for me if you want to play the money line. But
yeah,
it's fascinating. I think we're going to learn a lot from this match, especially
who do we learn more from?
City match.
Who do we learn more from, City or Liverpool in this match?
I think we learn a lot more from City in this match.
I agree. I agree. Because if City does kind of just comfortably beat Liverpool here at Anfield, which like again nobody does, then I mean I know Arsenal still goes there. City has the toughest of the 3 remaining schedules because they still they go to Tottenham. I believe they also go to Brighton. Like they have some tougher away games. They go to Villa. They host Villa.
They host Villa.
Yeah, so there are some tough. They have the toughest of the 3 remaining schedules.
Yep.
That could work in their favor, without a doubt. But
it could.
Liverpool's going to get most of their tough games after this at home. So
if Liverpool wins this, they might jump to be the favorites to win.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, they're going to be minus odds if they win this, and I'd probably look to fade them actually off of that.
Yep. Exactly.
But yeah, I mean it's a huge leverage match. We're very excited for it. Game of the year, tough stuff. Going to wait more on the market and see if we can't get Salah in there. And if I'm almost hoping he plays because I know he's obviously an upgrade over Diaz, and if Salah can't go, then it's Harvey Elliott.
Yeah, it's
Gakpo,
Harvey Elliott, or they'll play
Nunez off the left, play Gakpo centrally.
Yeah,
which Nunez off the right.
Which that really, in big matches hasn't worked. They tried that against Arsenal, playing Gakpo more centrally, and famously Saliba just put him in his pocket for 60 minutes, and then they subbed on Nunez, and then obviously Liverpool created all their chances. So if they try to put Gakpo up top here, I'm gonna bet City.
Yeah,
they have to
love
start
Gakpo in this match. Gakpo's a weird fit in that team anyway. But
yeah.
All right, I think that's enough on the big game. We have a lot more to get to, and it's going to be amazing. And I just want to point out this one stat before we go away from it. Since Christmas, Arsenal plus 1 point. This is non-penalty plus 1.7 non-penalty xG. City plus 1.55 and Liverpool plus 1.39. That's non-penalty. Since Christmas, you schedule adjust that. Liverpool has played a slightly tougher schedule and has dealt with some injuries. But again, it just kind of gets to the point, which is like, oh, these 3 teams are way better than everybody else. And there's not even a close fourth. And they're kind of just obliterating everybody. And so now we're stuck in a world where it's an all-time title race. I tweeted this last week. I stand by it. Like
everybody's just holding
games,
serve. Nobody's blinking right now. Liverpool.
We almost had
the 98th minute. Calls. It's just against Nottingham Forest was just like
City. Like kind of had a close call with United. I mean, they in the sense that like the way the game played out, it looked like they might lose for a minute. But
I laughed so hard when that Rashford banger went in. I started dying laughing. I was just like, oh my gosh, here we go. We're going to have just like a billion shots from City, and we'll see if they go in.
Yeah. If Lieboff were here, he would say about the draw, for being honest.
Yeah.
But he's not, and we will move on.
No, he'll tell you about the 0-0.
The 0-0, yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Man United Everton.
Now we have the game of the year.
This is the game of the year. Yeah. Fair warning, the game kicks off at 7:30 a.m. Eastern. My win rate on those matches since we started this podcast is like 21%. I never win. I should sleep through and never bet them. But I do have a bet on this game. And look, it's the podcast special. We're all going to be on Everton one way or another. It's really funny. So, you get to this number, right? United's a small favorite at home, plus minus 125. Market says United is about a tick or two better than Everton, which generally, coming into the season, you would have laughed at somebody who said United's only going to be minus 125 at home against Everton. But then you watch the season play out and you're like, oh, like even that same casual is like, wow, United's only minus 125 at home against Everton. Like Everton's like barely fighting off relegation and looks like shit every other week. Even I would say any United fan would tell you they played their best in the last 10 matches. Højlund coming on was a big part of it. Now he's hurt, but Højlund coming on, big part of it. But they played their best soccer in the last 10 matches of the season. They finally had a winning run they put together. Yes, they lose to Fulham, they lose to City, so kind of blunts the love of it. But even in the last 620 minutes, Everton has a plus 0.03 XG difference per 90 minutes, which most Everton fans would tell you is their worst stretch of their season. They've been an average team by XG difference. United is minus 0.2. So again, an average team. These two teams are basically exactly the same. And we just had what I think Everton fans would tell you is their worst stretch, and United had their best stretch. The actual goal differences are about a goal apart. And that's just kind of the point. Like Onana's been great. He's helped their defense hold up. They've conceded a ton of shots. United, they're conceding like 20 shots just walking off the bus. They've already given up 20 shots. Onana's done good with shot stopping. They've generally not given up a ton of big chances, and not City match excluded. But again, like how long can you get away with giving up 20 shots a game in the Premier League and being supposed to be like an above average team, which the market prices United as an average team? And Everton is kind of elite defensively. Like they don't allow big chances. They don't allow a ton of shots in general. They're top 5 in XG allowed. They're very good at preventing those big chances. And the biggest difference here now, and where Everton has their advantage, I'm kind of stealing your thunder because I know you're going to mention this. Everton has created the most expected goals from set pieces this year. They've created the second most goals behind only Arsenal. United is the third worst by XG conceded from set pieces. Only Villa and Burnley are worse. So Everton, their biggest thing right now they have going for them is getting dead balls and then scoring off of them. United has a major problem there. That's where Everton flips this match and wins it as a dog.
Exactly. And, what it comes down to, we've been talking about this for a while, but Ten Hag has basically conceded that his team can no longer control matches. So even when they play these bottom end of the table teams like Fulham, Wolves, all these teams, they get in these back and forth transition match over and over and over again because he's realized like, hey, like this is the only chance we have to be successful is to try and press teams high, try and pick off a high turnover and create a big scoring chance off of that. They've gotten high turnovers, but like we mentioned, they aren't getting goals off of those high turnovers. And then once teams beat the first line of the pressure, they just have acres of space to just run directly right at United's back line that is still without Luke Shaw, still without Lisandro Martinez. So now you're going to face Everton, who's one of the better transition offenses in the Premier League, a team that is really good at getting the ball into wide spaces and creating chances via crosses. I mean, even if Everton decides, okay, you know what, United, we don't really want to get in a back and forth with you. We don't want a high-paced type match. We're just going to sit. We're going to do what we do best. We're going to sit in our mid block and dare you guys to play through us. The previous meeting, I know people will say, well, United beat Everton 3-0 at Goodison Park, the previous meeting. Well, if you remember, Garnacho hit the best goal of the year. That's probably going to win the Puskas Award at the end of the year. And it completely flipped the match on its head. And now Everton has to play aggressive. They have to press high. And then it got end to end. And in the end, Everton ended up winning the expected goals battle and outshot United 24-8 and ended up losing 3-0. And that just kind of highlights how bad of luck Everton have had, this season, but really during this last run. They're winless in their last 10 Premier League matches during that time frame. -1 actual goal differential. Minus 11 actual goal differential, -1 expected goal differential. They have scored 7 goals off of 13.8 expected. They are so overdue for a positive result here, and it's going to come at Old Trafford. So, this sets up so terribly for United, and it's the game of the year for me, quite frankly. This is my game of the year. Everton +0.5 at even money. I have Everton projected as a favorite. And I don't think I'm that wrong because they have significantly been a better team this year. They've been better offensively. They've been better defensively. They've been better on set pieces. They're better from open play. They're a better pressing team. I mean, you can look through every single statistical category and you can say, oh my gosh, Everton are better. Or even if you look at box entries and final third entries, yes, United is better, but they're not doing anything with that. Everton actually does something when they enter the box. So I love Everton here +0.5. I think it's one of the biggest edges I've had this entire Premier League season. So therefore, it's the game of the year.
Yeah, I would love to bet United as a home dog, but it kind of gets back to the point, which is remember we talked about that match. It was in November. It was a where were you moment, and I was sitting there. We bet Everton when we talked about it in the pod. They were a slight dog at home, and I said they should be favored. They closed a favorite and were down a goal inside 5 minutes on a banger. And that happens. It's a soccer match. Sometimes the guy hits the ball into the corner on a great bicycle kick and you tip your cap and you say, okay. But the run of the match, nobody who watched that match would tell you United was the better team in the first half. And the biggest thing is, okay, if you just took that closing line and then flipped home field, that would not even get you to United -125.
No.
So, you're getting extra added onto United off of this run of form. And again, the main reason they were playing better is because Højlund was kicking the ball into the net now,
and he's out.
and then and he's out. So it's a bit of an issue when they don't really have like a true striker on the team. Rashford's still not best when he plays that position, and I just really don't think Everton's going to give you a ton of space in behind, and that's what United loves, and they're not going to get it. So I think this plays out well for Everton. I think I like them as well. I bet them. If you follow them in the app, we can wake up at 7:30 and sweat it out in the morning. All right, next game, Bournemouth, Sheffield United. My notes say LOL no in all caps. I did not prep this game. I pulled up my numbers. I said, all right, I got a little bit of value on Sheffield. I said, nope, pass.
Yeah, no. Sheffield's quit. That's pretty clear. If you watch the Arsenal match, they have completely quit. They have
dude, the goalie play between them and Forrest.
I've talked about this before with the goalie. So he's Fotheringham's been really bad this season, right?
Now they have Grbić.
And now they have Grbić in there.
He was awful on Monday.
Fotheringham, they told him at the transfer deadline that we're going to try to loan you out because we're going to bring somebody else in. And that didn't happen. The goalie they wanted didn't come in. So they just left him in net. So he's just sitting there in net being like, they wanted somebody other than me and they were going to loan me out. And now I have to just sit here and just absorb 25 shots a game right now. So, I was thinking about this and I need to look deeper into the schedules, and I'll put it out on Twitter if I'm feeling it. But Bournemouth, I know we gave them out 9-1 for top half finish at the beginning of the season. They're like 3-1 right now for top half finish. Mm-hmm. And they have a run here of Sheffield and Luton back to back at home. 6 points flips them right up the table and gives them within a shot of getting here to the top 10. So that's my thought from this match. That was the only thing I had. If you want to lay with Bournemouth, go ahead. That's fine. They weren't that great against Burnley, quite frankly, in their previous match. I thought Burnley really controlled the match. I mean, Burnley had close to 70% possession, and we're doing a really good job controlling the middle of the pitch. And then Bournemouth snuck a couple off of them. But Sheffield's obviously a very different team than that of Burnley, and Sheffield feels a lot like Norwich 2 years ago, when it was just like Norwich was the worst team by far in the Premier League and they were going down, and it was just like, what do we even do with this team? Like we kept betting them to score, against whatever it is. But like
their attack wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
It was terrible, but it wasn't as terrible as the market thought. Yeah, which is funny is because when you first said Norwich, I was actually thinking about Premier League restart Norwich.
Yeah.
Like imagine you're a player on Norwich and you have the COVID break, you get like 3 months off, no soccer. And you come back to play 11 matches, I think it was, or 12 matches. They played the first match against Southampton. They were still decently live to stay up. I mean, they would have had to go on a good run, but like, again, it's like you got to restart. It's like a new season.
Yeah.
And they didn't win a single match. They didn't even draw a single match. They lost all of them and they went down. It was the Daniel Farke Norwich. So
yeah. And guess what? He might be back next season.
I saw.
Leeds.
That guy keeps getting jobs. It's amazing.
I know. It's amazing.
The retread era. But yeah, Bournemouth. So Bournemouth remaining schedule, they have one of the tougher ones. So that's not great. But
the finish is hard. Like they finished Brighton, Arsenal, Brentford, and Chelsea. But in their next 7 matches, it's Sheffield, Luton, Wolves, Everton, Crystal Palace, Luton. Then they get United at home, and then the last 5 are hard: at Villa, home Brighton, at Arsenal, home Brentford, and away.
Their next 4 matches are at home.
No, the 3 of their next 4 are at home. They travel 4 of the next 5 are at home. They get Everton, Crystal Palace at home, Luton, Sheffield at home, and they go to Wolves. Which, that Wolves match has been postponed.
Right. So their next 4 are at home.
Yeah,
and that's the time, right? So here's the thing, and we're gonna get into the season where like teams start to be on the beach and they don't really care, and it's like okay, but when you get down to it, like you're getting 4 straight home games, and Bournemouth is the kind of team when you're having a season like this, you're the team that wants to play all the way in. Whereas by the time they play Brighton in April, they're either going to be in the Europa League or pretty much coasting. Man United by late April is going to be in a weird place. Even like Brentford on the second to last week. And then at Chelsea on the final. Yeah, so like they have a path here.
There's definitely a path.
You're right. Like they're going to play Luton twice, and they're going to play Sheffield and Palace at home in the next 5 match weeks. They're going to this is time for them to make their run. And the way they've been playing, like they're playing well enough. Although picked up a big injury with Senesi, so that's not great.
Yep.
But either way,
so they're currently 8 points back from Brighton to get to the top half. So
they're only 3-1.
They're 3-1 currently, or they're plus 290 at Bet365 right now. So essentially 3-1.
But they have the game in hand, right? And
they have the game in hand. So game in hand. If you assume that game in hand, which is Luton, which is 3 points at home, they would essentially be 5 points behind Brighton for a top half finish. And that's also not factoring in the fact that
Wolves are top half.
Oh yeah, 10th. Excuse me.
That's the spot.
That's the spot right there.
Also, West Ham. I mean, like we talk about West Ham a lot here.
To their two strikers. So
yeah,
that's the only thing I thought from this match was Bournemouth top half finished 3-1. I'll put it. You know what? I'll put it out on Twitter after this podcast comes out. I'm
going to just stick with our original ticket, but yeah, I mean, Chelsea's going to be a problem there too. Probably. It's a shame. West Ham has 42. Bournemouth at 31, 34 if they win the match. Chelsea also has a game in hand. So I think Chelsea's the big problem there because I think Wolves could drop. I think West Ham could drop. I don't really see Newcastle or Brighton falling that far below Bournemouth. So it's not impossible, but they're not out of the mix. It's a shame they had some bad luck coming in here. Conceded a couple late goals that cost them points and wins. Anyway, we are not betting this match. If you bet this match, there's so many better matches to bet.
Solanke, anytime goal score.
Yeah, minus 200. I have no idea what the line is. Don't bet that. Crystal Palace against Luton Town. Another one. Not the most exciting on the board. Palace minus 132 on the money line. Total sitting at 2.5. You have some thoughts on this?
I do. I like another Luton Town over. And I quite frankly, I think the market is continually putting their overs a little too low given the style of play that they've had recently. What we've seen from Crystal Palace under Glasner, it's been a few matches, but his Frankfurt teams are what you would call compact pressing. So press from the middle, you try to press intensely from there. But as you saw against Tottenham and even for stretches against Burnley, they actually are playing very, very passive, very similar to Roy Hodgson's Crystal Palace. I know it's a different formation, but the defensive principles have been the exact same. The point of what he's trying to do, and it's what a lot of managers are trying to do now, is he's trying to dominate the middle of the pitch. Like as you watched against Tottenham, they did just 5-4-1, like let's just smother the middle of the pitch. Tottenham, you're not playing through there. So they allowed Tottenham a lot of 2v1s outside. If they do that here again against Luton Town, that's what Luton Town wants. They want to create chances via crosses. They don't want to go through the middle of the pitch. They want to be able to create chances off of that, and they also want to create chances off of set pieces. The Luton back post overload got another goal. Actually, 2 goals, off of set pieces against Aston Villa. Crystal Palace is still having a lot of issues defending corners and defending set pieces. It's been true for 3-4 years now, and nothing has really changed. Previous meeting, Luton scored a goal off a corner and a goal off a cross, which, Crystal Palace is second to last in the Premier League at allowing crosses into their penalty area. So if Crystal Palace wants to keep the same defensive principle and defensive structure of we're not going to let you play through the middle of the pitch, Luton says, all right, cool. We'll just get the ball wide. We'll send in crosses. We'll get the ball in dead ball situations, and we'll try to score goals off of set pieces. Now, the flip side of that is what I've been saying with Luton Town is Rob Edwards is basically now listen, we're going to get relegated unless we go for it. So we're going to press high. We're going to go man-to-man across the pitch, and we think we're physical enough to disrupt your build-up play. My guess is what we've seen from Crystal Palace and Glasgow in the last few matches is they're probably going to send the ball long when Luton Town tries to press, try to win a lot of second balls, very similar to what Roy Hodgson's was with Crystal Palace. And I think what you'll see with Glasner is as we get further and further into the season and into next year, you'll see a different Crystal Palace. But right now, given the squad they have and what they've been playing for so long, he's probably just all right, let's just kind of keep the same. Let's just try to stay in the Premier League. That's the main thing we're trying to do here. But if Luton Town tries to go man-to-man, Palace has, very capable players that can beat them over the top. Eze's probably going to flourish in a match like this. He's going to go man-to-man against somebody. So I'm seeing a very back and forth type of match here again with Luton Town. This is what they want. Luton Town wants to create chaos. And I'm not sure Crystal Palace is good enough in possession to slow this match down and make it, a grinded out type affair. So, especially with them being favorites, I don't see a scenario where they're just going to sit in defensive block like they did against Tottenham and just say, hey, here you go, Luton down, like try to break us down and we'll try to beat you on the counter. So, projected 3 goals for this match. I mean, over is 2.5 at -110. I love the over here. And after this podcast is over, I'm going to bet the over in Bournemouth, Luton Town as well.
So let's do a quick oral history of BJ betting Luton overs. He bet the Brighton Luton over 3, landed 4-0, 4 expected goals, clean winner. Brighton Luton Newcastle, I don't even know what the total was. I think it was 3 again. Ended 4-4, 4.7 XG. Luton Sheffield over 2.5. Crazy that total was 2.5.
I bet I did both. Yeah, I did. I think I did both teams to score in that one.
Well, they both scored. And Sheffield scored 3 times. So there was 4 goals, 3.5 XG. Over 3 in the Luton Man United game. Ended 3 with 4.7 XG. So a push there. Then they went over against Liverpool easily. Over against Villa easily. So that is, if you're keeping score at home, including the FA Cup match, 7 straight Luton overs. BJ's 5-0-1 betting them. So I have only bet one of them myself. I feel like a loser. I'm missing out on the money train. At some point, Edwards has to adjust, right? Because they keep losing. They're not winning any of these
really.
matches.
Like, I mean, if
yes, okay. They lost to United, Liverpool, and Villa, and City in the
exactly.
Cup. Fine.
And they should have beat Villa. Like, they played really good in the second half, and they deserved to come back to the 2-2 draw, and then they kind of just conceded late. But the problem is, and what I've been telling everybody, is that the beginning of the season, he tried this passive low block, and they were so bad at keeping teams through the middle of the pitch that he had to just abandon it. Like, he doesn't really have a choice right now. They need to get out of this relegation zone. And their best method of doing that is to play super aggressive and to play these high event type matches. I mean, we went through a stretch at the beginning of the season where they had, going into their match where they actually beat Crystal Palace in this previous one, they had only won 1 match, and it was against Everton. So, and even before they played against Brighton, they had gotten a couple of results in the FA Cup. But if you remember, they had lost to Chelsea. They barely beat, they had a really poor match against Sheffield United, got the upset against Newcastle, but still didn't look that great. Like, there was a point where he had to say, all right, like, this is how we played last year in the championship. Like, we pressed everybody high. Like, we tried to create this big, intense type of thing, and it actually worked, and it got us to the Premier League. Let's go back to that. So that's what he's done. And it's hard for me to, given the squad that he has, to say that he's wrong. And one more thing I'll just mention, Sambi Lokonga is also out for them. If Luton Town ever wants to have any type of control of a match, like, he has to be in there. Like, he is the one guy in their defensive midfield that can actually control the ball and distribute it. So without him, it becomes like they have to play chaotic.
Yeah, a lot of defensive injuries for Luton too. We'll move on real quick. We said a couple weeks ago, like a month ago, Luton was the best ATS in the league. They are now 4 straight non-covers. So maybe the market catching on a little bit and overreating Luton Town. Very possible. Palace, 7 wins this year. 4 of them came against Burnley and Sheffield. So they have done well against the other relegation fodder. All right, Wolves, Fulham, kind of a price that I generally show value on with Wolves here, but I also think the striker situation is kind of dire for one and looking better for Fulham. Muniz is giving them real production. Scored a goal against Brighton last week, 0.37 XG per 90, over a half XG plus XA per 90. He scored 5 goals in 9 90s. That's pretty good. Yeah. And that's real. And Fulham with real striker production is not a terrible team. We talked about this a lot on the show. And now Wolves don't really have like their guy, given their injury situation. And so there's questions about how they make this work. They've made it work all year, and kind of surprised even us, even though we were, down on them coming in, and then they fired the manager. We were up on them, and then we didn't think they'd be this good. They still have run good to get to where they are. And so I think this number is pretty much right for me. And I'm going to pass given the situation with both teams' health kind of trending in opposite directions and trending toward Fulham.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, I saw this number and I said, what? For a second. And I was like getting ready. And then I went and looked at the injury situation. Not only no Hwang, no Cunha. We could be without João Gomez, who's been one of their best ball winners in the middle of the pitch. Pedro Neto is also questionable. Jose Sa is questionable. So like the 5 best players that Wolves have are not going to be available. So it's very, very hard to get behind a bet from here. And also Fulham, just go take a look at their road expected goal differential, which we said they have played a lot of good teams on the road, but still they're pretty bad. So easy pass.
All right. Arsenal hosts Brentford. So
Yeah, this is a pass too.
yeah, I don't even want to bet Brentford anymore. It's been a weird situation for Brentford, right? The goalkeeping situation, we've talked about that ad nauseum, but their performances have generally just kind of declined as the season's gone on. The attack is still fine, but you're going up against the best defense in the Prem on the road at Arsenal. That's not a great matchup. You're going up against a team that's pretty good on set pieces. That's where Brentford usually excels. And so I think when you think about like who can be good against Arsenal, what teams match up well, I think a more robust defensive side is the kind of team that I want to go at Arsenal with and kind of just turn it into an ugly match. Now, there are like no teams in the Prem that play defense this year. So that's a different issue. But actually, they still go to Everton, right? No, they went to Everton. They host Everton last day.
They host Everton on the final day. So I'm just gonna tell people right now, if Arsenal has a chance to win the Premier League and Liverpool is right there with them, Everton will throw that match 1,000 times out of 1,000.
Assuming they already deducted all of the points.
Yeah. Well. Also, we don't me and Michael on the last episode said the way that the appeal is going to work for both Everton and Nottingham Forest is the appeal is going to be finalized 4 days after the Premier League is over. So
that's crazy.
We might not know.
That is Luton Town's best chance of staying up is that Forest gets a penalty. Anyway, exactly. The one stat that I found really funny when I was just kind of digging through some numbers and like who's run good, who's run bad. So there's a stat and it's how much have you benefited or been hurt by opposition goalkeeper play, which is pretty much totally out of your hands. It was inspired by BJ sent it in our Discord and I think he tweeted it. Everton have had the 3 best opponent goalkeeper performances against them this season. It was the West Ham
on Saturday.
Fulham,
the best goalkeeper performance of the entire season.
Yeah, West Ham,
yeah.
Areola, and whoever they need to pull out to do the job. You know, Bern Leno and who was the third one?
Jose
Sa, our old legend and friend, Jose Sa. Yeah. That was the famous early season match, right? When Kozlaic
scored. The 1-1 or the Wolves 1-0 win.
Yeah, somehow. So Brighton and Everton have been the 2 unluckiest this season. They've lost about 5 to 6 goals. Everton, of course, those 3 games are like 4 goals alone. Brighton have been unlucky on that sense. Arsenal has scored 14 extra goals this year based on bad goalkeeper play. And I watched Monday. I mean, Gerbic looked
6 of them came on Monday.
Yeah, about 4 of them were on Monday. And so Arsenal have gotten 14 extra goals. The next best in the league is Villa at 5. So that's pretty funny. Now, does it matter going forward? No, but it is just kind of funny that how these little things like change our narratives about what we think about a team. Brighton and Everton have generally, I'd say, underperformed, although even Everton haven't really, but whatever. They've underperformed their XG. And so much of it just comes down to like, oh, did you run good with your own goalie? Is your own goalie better than we thought? Or is the other team's goalie running hot against you? And that just like decides so much of the season. And we talk all this stuff about other things, and then it just comes down to that. I don't have a bet for this match either. If anything, I would take some
Saka, anytime goal scorer.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people were betting him on Monday, and then he came off.
He didn't score.
He scored 6, and he came off at half, and it was really funny. He did not score. Hit the post in like the 30th second of the game. Anyway, Villa Tottenham Sunday at 9. Fun one here.
This is fun.
2 teams that just don't defend anymore.
Nah.
2 teams that give up the highest XG per shot in the league, along with Newcastle and then Fulham. Villa's way over everybody else because of that high line. Both teams play a high line. They're going to condense the space in the midfield. They're just going to be constant runners. And Richarlison's going to be out, which means it's going to be Son, Werner, and Johnson here.
Which it was in the previous meeting.
Right. And that is... Well, Werner didn't play, but...
Or, yeah, excuse me, not Werner. I think they started...
Kulu.
They started Brian Hill.
Oh, right. Oh, geez. But anyway, it kind of gets to the point, which is like, oh, if you were telling me we're going to have to run in behind the defense a bunch, I mean, I'd take Timo Werner, Brennan Johnson, and Son over most of the teams in the league. So that's fun. And then Villa at the other end, they're conceding over 2 expected goals per match the last 2 months, but they're creating 2.1 XG. So they've kind of made it work. And 3.5 even money. It's so crazy to be betting overs in Villa Tottenham at 3.5 even money, but I think it's a little low.
I think it is too. I got 3.9 goals for this match.
Yeah, I'm closer to 3.8, but yeah.
I know Konsa will be back for Villa, so that obviously helps them a little bit. But Kamara is out, and then Jacob Ramsey picked up an injury as well. So it's going to be Zaniolo probably
No
would be
defending.
my guess of starting, or Tielemans, or
No defending.
somebody starting in the midfield there, which there's no ball winning there. So, James Maddison was not available for this match in the previous one, and he is obviously so crucial to Tottenham's build-up and their ability to play through the central parts of the pitch, which, Tottenham, they can play balls in over the top, or they can play through the middle here against Villa. I mean, what is Villa going to do to actually stop them? Like you just mentioned it, 2 expected goals per 90 over the last 2 months. And, Tottenham's going to play their high line as well. I know Emerson and Ben Davies were the center back pairing the last time that they faced Villa. But Villa, what's funny is I went back and watched the highlights from that match. Not only, it ended up 2-1, Aston Villa won, and there was, close to 4 expected goals created. There were 3 goals VAR'd off due to offsides.
Yep.
Like one of them, Watkins was off by like just a toenail. A couple others were like so close for Tottenham. So I just don't see a scenario how this match like ends 1-1 with like 2.1 expected goals created. Like given the style of play of both of these teams. And also, Villa, we have to say it every week, they're so bad at defending set pieces. They conceded 2 against Luton Town in their previous match. Last match, Tottenham actually is a top 10 team on set pieces. They've been decent on them. They're not great, but they are decent.
Maddison being back
have
helps.
Big advantages there. No Diego Carlos and no Kamara. You lose 2 of your biggest physical presences on set pieces as well. So I don't see how this. Yeah, again, I say this. I've been saying this lately in a lot of these matches where it's like, all right, I'm going to bet the over. I don't think you're going to walk away from this match if you lose it and be like, yeah, I should have lost. Like that game was going way under the entire time. I think you're going to walk away from this match and being like, I should have won that. Or, hey, we did win it. Great. Awesome. We actually won a bet.
It's kind of like when United played Villa on Boxing Day.
The style of play from these 2 teams.
Kind of like when United played Villa on Boxing Day, and it was right after the holidays, so a lot of my friends who don't even bet soccer regularly were tailing it, and they were like really in and watching the match. And they were getting so annoyed because United had like a goal VAR'd off, and they were like kept getting called offside. And I'm like, look, like this dam is going to break. And with Tottenham matches all year, it has felt like that. Even when you're like sitting there with an under, like I had a 3.5 when they played Bournemouth. The first half, like it was, I think 0-0, and I felt pretty good. Maybe it was 1-0. I felt like pretty good about the fact that there weren't a ton of chances, but there were so many chances to have chances that didn't turn into chances. If you know what I'm saying, like almost XG, almost shots, almost this one pass was off by a yard, or else they would have had like a clear one-on-one with the goalie. And then of course the game ends 3-1. And that's happened so many times in Tottenham matches this year. Like last weekend, they played Palace, 0-0 halftime. As they hit a banger, 1 defensive error. Now it's 1-1. Then it's 2-1. Once it's 2-1, Tottenham are so much a live over team when they play in those game states. And that will get you potentially that 4th goal. Either way, if it's 2-1 late with like 5-10 minutes to go, the way they add stoppage time, it's going to be so much time and chances to get like multiple goals. And neither team can defend a lead. So it's going to be very interesting. And I like the over as well. All right, Brighton and Forest. Now, I like the under 3 here at -110. I think you agree. This total is just a little high. The problem is who's playing for Brighton. De Zerbi has gone too far, I think, with the rotating. But he's had some injury problems. He's had some where he doesn't have a choice. But at this point in the season for Brighton, they have a chance to make a Europa League run here. They're like a coin flip against Roma. The first leg is Thursday. The second leg is next Thursday. This match is not as important. And so you could see some rotation from Brighton's top attackers. You can see them kind of playing this on light mode. And Forest is a team that is not going to press. They are not going to force high turnovers. They're not going to turn this into a frenetic back and forth. They're going to sit deep and kind of go with the more passive approach. And Brighton's defense is not as bad as maybe the narrative is. Yep. So I like under. That's all.
Yeah, I do too. What it comes down to is, De Zerbi, I'm kind of souring on him a little bit.
Whoa, pause. Can't say that.
I can't say that. Okay. Well, I'm just saying. Okay, so here's what it comes down to.
That's one of the 7 sins of the podcast.
I know. Oh no, I'm not. this is Graham Potter's team, right? No, I'm just kidding.
The thing is, like, Brighton's in 9th, and everybody's like, "What a terrible season for Brighton!" And it's like, wait a minute.
I know, and I'm like, I need
after
to
they sold their like 2 of their 3 best players.
I told you on Monday because I bet Brighton against Fulham. I was like, I'm just done with them. Like, I just can't do it anymore. But what it comes down to is, De Zerbi has plan A, right? Which plan A is to bait you into pressing, find the free man, and let's get a transition opportunity going forward. And we're going to play through you that way. We're going to get 4-3. We're going to get 4-3 overloads and build up, and we're just going to constantly do that. What we've been seeing this year is he's been figured out. It's when plan A doesn't work, which is essentially what Forrest is going to do, aka sit in a very, very passive low block and say, we're not even going to try to press you. There is no plan B. And his philosophy is plan A is so good, we don't need a plan B. And teams will eventually have to press us. Well, when teams don't do that, we've seen Brighton have had a lot of struggles at breaking down low blocks. Then you look at who's not available for Brighton right now. Matoma is probably going to be out for the entire season. When Brighton wants to play through the middle of the pitch, he often gets in 1v1 situations out wide and creates a lot of chances and creates havoc and has been so good for them that way. Not having that is a big problem. João Pedro, he's also out for this match. He leads them in goals. He leads them at XG per 90 at 0.54. Nobody on Brighton is above 0.35 outside of him. So we have another situation where it's De Zerbi versus a low block. And we just saw him play 3 straight teams that are going to play the exact same way as Nottingham Forest. He played Fulham in the previous match. He played Wolves in the FA Cup, and then they played Everton. They didn't create over 1.5 expected goals in any of those matches. So I have 2.6 goals for this match. I think this is a really, really good under. I think it's going to be a very, very slow-paced match. You look at the previous match, it ended 3-2, but there were 2 penalties in there. And really, if you take away those 2 penalties, we're at 1.7 non-penalty for the entire match. Yeah. So unders never win in the Premier League. Maybe this one will.
There we go. I got 2 this weekend, so I'm kind of sweating it. All right, Monday Night Football, Chelsea, Newcastle. Sorry, I skipped one. We have West Ham, Burnley. I have nothing. You have nothing?
I have nothing.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about Burnley. They are so uninteresting.
Boring to me.
Yeah, the one team who can't attack in the year where everybody can score. Them in Sheffield. So Chelsea, Newcastle, Monday night. 3.5 is plus 120 over. Since the new year, Chelsea's allowing 1.9 non-penalty XG per match. Newcastle 2.1. Both teams are over 1.5 and conceding constant high-quality chances. What's the game state where this doesn't go over? I think it's Chelsea doesn't make any of their finishing because Newcastle doesn't really have a path to defend them effectively.
Or Newcastle just suddenly decides to change back to the 4-5-1, which I don't see a scenario why they would ever do that. But it's here's the thing is that, and I mentioned this with Newcastle, is that they've established, and when Newcastle was at their best, their pressing structure was very, very similar to what Arsenal is doing right now. So what Arsenal is doing right now is they press with their front 6, and obviously the fullbacks come in aid, and so they make it very, very difficult on you, and then they just concede the space like on balls over the top right in front of the center backs. And the theory behind it is, right, because if you press, like generally something's going to be open on the pitch. The theory is that if we leave that space in the middle part of the pitch in front of the center backs, like we believe we have talented enough players that can go win those type of balls when they try to play over the top, or we have good enough center backs that can pick those off. And it's been generally true for Arsenal. When Newcastle was at their best, when Joe Linton was healthy, when Guimaraes was healthy, when even Sandro Tonali was available to play, they were so good at this pressing structure. And now we're in a situation where Joe Linton's not available. Obviously, Tonali's been not available forever. And those midfielders who made those runs to protect that area right in front of the center backs, because Schär and Botman are slow and not very good at getting up there, they've said, okay, well, let's go more passive because like we got to protect our back line. We got to, we'll try to win more balls in the midfield and everything. And now Eddie Howe's like, well, that didn't work, so we got to flip the other way. So now Schär and Botman are up here and they're pressing and they're going man-to-man against the opposing attackers. And so that creates a very back and forth type match, which is what Newcastle wants right now. And it's their best option with the personnel available. And what we know about Chelsea is, when are they at their best? When they're playing in transition. They're not very good when teams play low blocks, they hand them the ball and they say, all right, here you go, Chelsea, try to break us down. They're not really good in that sense. So I agree with you. I don't really see, similar to kind of Aston Villa and Tottenham, I don't really see a scenario where you're going to walk away from this match and be like, that was a stone cold under. Like, couldn't believe it. There was like 0.8 expected goals for the entire match. It's like nothing happened. Like, no, this is going to be very, very end-to-end style. And even, I know Wolves only created, 0.7, I think it was, for the entire match. They had so many transition opportunities that, they just didn't get a shot off of. So with Newcastle playing a high line and the runners that Chelsea has to get in behind them, and with the fact that Chelsea's also not great in transition defense either when they lose the ball, this is going to be very, very end-to-end. And Newcastle also could force a lot of high turnovers. Forced 9 in the previous meeting, could do the same here.
All right, that concludes the Prem. We got a shortened slate next weekend, so we'll have more time to get into the other leagues. We don't have a ton of time to get into the Bundesliga, Serie A, La Liga, Liga. Not a ton of great matches this weekend. Bundesliga, BJ.
Gladbach, -120 at home against Cologne.
Big derby.
I think, yes, big derby. Gladbach has, been in the bottom half of the table for most of the season, but the reason they're there is because they're just struggling against good teams. When they play against teams in the bottom half of the table, they have a plus 6.1 expected goal differential. And, for any of you who had Daniel Farke being mentioned over 1.5 on this episode, you're about to cash like 100-1, because one of the main weaknesses that Gladbach had under Farke for a long time is like they were trying to press and they generally weren't good in transition defense. Well, now they've gone the other way, where they've now playing very, very passively. Like, they're dead last in pass per defensive action. They've forced the second fewest high turnovers, and it hasn't made their defense better, but they have been better at home. They're 14.8 expected goals allowed in 12 matches at home. They've just generally been really bad on the road. Plus 3.7 expected goal differential at home, generally been very good there. They've been a good transition team, second and final third of box entry conversion rate. Taking on Cologne, who, they're one of the worst teams in the Bundesliga. If it wasn't for Darmstadt, they'd be the worst by far team in the Bundesliga. They have won the expected goals battle 3 times in 24 matches. 2 of those matches, they were playing up a man for a significant amount of time. The other one came against Darmstadt. They are so bad, and this line to me is very undervaluing a good Gladbach team that is finally healthy. So Gladbach -120.
Good is a stretch on Gladbach. They are in pretty good space from the relegation zone now, 9 points. So they're probably not going to get relegated, but I would not call them good. But they are certainly a little cheap here. The market's just liked Cologne to bounce back more than we all do. And maybe they're right, but like at some point they need to show it, and they're not really doing that. So more power to you. I kind of agree. So Bochum +140 for me at home against Freiburg. Classic Europa League fade spot for Freiburg in the middle of their matchup with West Ham, where they go on the road, where they're not nearly as good away from the Black Forest. Their numbers don't hold up. Are on the road against a Bochum team who is kind of the most Jekyll and Hyde in Germany, in the sense that you really never know what you're going to get on a week-to-week basis. Like, we saw them beat Bayern not that long ago. They were very competitive at home against Leipzig until they fell apart in a 3-minute stretch, gave up 3 goals. And then in the middle of those games where they beat Bayern and were competitive with Leipzig, they got waxed at Gladbach 5-2. But at home here, I like this Bochum team. They have been a positive XG difference and goal difference team at home this year, and I think that holds up. Given that away from home, they're -1.5 XG difference per 90. So I like backing them at home, +140 at home, and a good spot against Freiburg. Also like Mainz. Mainz hosting. Mainz continues to be a bit of a bet on, especially as a dog. They were good against Leverkusen, very competitive in that match after Leverkusen got another early goal from Grimaldo. But they're not great as a favorite, but they're just playing a ton of coin flip matches. They played a coin flip at Leverkusen, a coin flip at home against Gladbach, a coin flip at Stuttgart, a coin flip against Union. Like, every match they play is close because their defense is still very good. They just can't score this year. And as a result, they are in the relegation zone despite like pretty average numbers. So I think they're competitive with Bayern. They're going to get on the board, probably lose 2-1, but They'll be in the mix covering the +2 at even money. So I like them.
Yeah.
And in Serie A, there's levels to this bowl. Cagliari is -110 at home against BJ's Salernitana. That's kind of crazy to me. They're like a half goal better, and Salernitana is getting relegated. We're finally going to cash a Salernitana relegation ticket. Finally, I think we've lost 2, so their +300 is going to make us just about even. But
Ruiz won't even come on the pitch. He's still mad about not being moved to Wolves that he's refusing to go on the pitch. It's crazy.
Yeah, I like Cagliari at home.
Yeah. Roma draw no bet +105 on the road against Fiorentina. Just another fade of Fiorentina. I think I just do that every single time I come on the Serie A section. But generally, they just keep getting overvalued by the market for a team that is really good at building up. But once they get in the final third, it just everything falls apart. They're only averaging close to 1.1 non-penalty XG per 90 minutes. Obviously, Roma's playing much differently under De Rossi. They have the Europa League match against Brighton on Thursday. What's crazy about the Roma matches, since De Rossi took over, there have been 32 goals off of about 20 expected, I would say. It's been like nuts. And
every game
Roma's
has gone over
like
except the Europa League.
in there too, so it's been like, it's just been nuts. So eventually this like chaotic, like, back and forth is going to, come to an end at some point. But here, I generally just think, Roma's still playing very well under him. It's not like they're playing bad. They've won a lot of matches, but they're still have a positive expected goal differential, won the XG battle in all but 2 of the matches that he's been in charge for. So decent spot here on the road against an overvalued Fiorentina team.
It's really funny because I said on the pod, like, bet Roma overs, markets, they're going to play a little more open. And they have played different. They switched from a 3-5-2 to a 4-4-3-3, and it has freed up Dybala and Pellegrini more and given them more freedom, and it's resulted in more goals. But there's a lot of air in those numbers. Every Serie A match they've played has gone over 2.5, all of them, and I think it's 6 or 7. And yet, like, there's some penalty error and some finishing error in there. But again, like, there is some signal to it. But again, like, it won't be long until the market overreacts and we have to say, well, they're still not pressing at all. They still play very passively at it. Like, they're not that different under De Rossi. He's also upgraded them in goal, which makes them more live for a Europa League run if they can get past Brighton, which I don't know they will. That'll be a good matchup. All right, La Liga. I like Sevilla, Almeria over 2.5. 2 really bad defenses. And the Serie healthy for Sevilla makes a big difference. I saw somebody in our Discord mention, like, new manager for Sevilla, don't really want to fade them. They still can't defend anything, but they certainly seem to have more fresh ideas and attack. And it looks, when they can cross to end the Serie and he's still fit and available, which is not all the time, but right now he is, they're not a bad attacking team. So over 2.5 for me in that one.
Yeah, I like a both teams to score no here.
Real Madrid?
No, actually, Las Palmas and Athletic Bilbao.
Oh, man. Totals 2,
Las
right?
Palmas, they'll be a fun team to bet to be relegated next year because they have the worst expected goal differential in La Liga with an even actual goal differential. They're sitting in top half of the table. Just overperformed offensively. They control a ton of possession. And I was watching a couple clips from their match against Osasuna. The goal that they scored, they had like close to 30 passes before they put the ball in the back of the net, which is impressive, like controlling that much. But most of the time, it's just passes to nothing, like almost 60% possession, and you're only averaging 0.75 non-penalty XG per 90 minutes, even though you're getting the 5th most final third entries. So essentially, yeah, you can pass the ball from center back to center back, but you're not breaking down any good defensive team in this league. And guess what? They're facing the best out-of-possession team in La Liga in Bilbao, who's now forcing the most high turnovers, has, historically been one of the better mid-blocks across Europe's top 5 leagues. So I don't know how Las Palmas is scoring here, but on the reverse end of it, Bilbao's offense is starting to trend downwards. 5.5 expected goals in their last 7 matches, only 3 big scoring chances. So got both teams to score no, projected -140. So like the current line of -115.
Yeah, if they lose the goalkeeper too, Palmas could be in some trouble.
Yeah.
All right, Ligue, you like who?
Lille.
Our boys.
Even money against Rennes. Lille, I've mentioned this the last time, since the beginning of November, has the best expected goal differential in Ligue 1. Very, very good team under Fonseca. He's really done a lot well with them tactically, whether they, play with their, whether it be playing in transition or building out from the back. Like they're very a well-versed tactical team that can adapt to a lot of different scenarios. And Rennes, they went through this big winning stretch. But if you look into who they've played, I mean, they have played a lot of teams in the bottom half of the table. They got a nice win against Nice. They drew against PSG. And then over the weekend, they just laid a stinker against Lorient at home and lost 2-1. So I think that Lille is generally pretty much week in, week out getting undervalued by the market because of how far they are down at the table, when the reality is their underlying numbers are still very, very good, especially over the second half of the season. So I like Lille at even money.
All right, Underdog Parlay. Good hit for BJ on Mallorca last week, right?
Yep.
Palace almost. They had a lead in the second half again, but did not. I didn't have a pick. But this week, we did get Michael to submit one.
Who do you think it is, everybody?
He gave two options.
5 seconds to take a guess.
He gave two options. His two options were Everton and Burnley. We decided that nobody should ever bet Burnley, so we're going with Everton plus 320 as Michael's leg. And BJ, I'm going to take a team in Ligue 1. You're also going to take a team in Ligue 1. So we're going to mix up the leagues a little bit. I like Brest plus 270 on the road against Lyon. They've been the much better team all year. Both teams have run pretty well defensively to get to this point where Brest is like the second team in the table. But if you look at just like all of the underlying numbers, they all suggest that Brest is clearly the better team. And I get that like you're baking in some of last year's data to say, oh, Lens was like one of the clear challengers to PSG, but like they lost a lot of talent from that team and have never come nowhere close to replicating the success they had. So I'm kind of just out on them generally and think that they've been a fade all year, despite their running good defensively. So give me Brest plus 270.
I'm going to go with Lorient plus 245 at home against Lyon. Lorient has been in fantastic form lately. 4 wins in their last 5 matches, plus 2.8 expected goal differential since the beginning of February. And what's happened is they're getting a lot of the positive aggression that they've been due for. They've been, for whatever reason, teams are just scoring at an incredibly high rate against them. They've allowed 45 goals off about 35 expected. The goalkeeper doesn't have a very significant, minus post-shot XG plus minus. So it just comes down to variance, and they haven't been getting it. Well, now that's swung the other way, and this is the time to start betting on them. They also dealt with a lot of injuries in the middle half of the season, and now a lot of those guys are getting healthy. Lyon was in the relegation zone to begin the season. They've climbed out of that, and they've gone on this a nice winning run under a new manager. Under the new manager, 12 matches, they've won 7 of them, but they've also lost the other 5. And during that run, they have about a plus 2 expected goal differential. But the problem that has existed for them basically all season long is they are terrible defensively. Under the new manager, they're still allowing close to 1.6 expected goals per 90 minutes. So now we get a situation with a team that's red hot coming in at home against a Lyon defense that has quite frankly still been terrible. And the previous meeting between these two was a really chaotic 3-3 draw, but Lyon only created 0.7 non-penalty expected goals, only had 10 touches in Lorient's penalty area. So I generally think that Lyon is overvalued here, and they haven't been good away from home as well. So Lorient plus 245.
Comes out to 48-1. Running out of time, BJ. Running out of time to win one of these this year. All right, best bets. I'll start Brighton and Forest under 3. We talked about this at depth, but the biggest thing here is Brighton is dealing with injuries and rotation. They have the Europa League on Thursday the week before and after, so they're kind of in a weird sandwich spot where they may not play all of their best attackers because they're more worried about Europa League advancement. That will depend on how Thursday goes, of course, but also tactically, Forest is going to sit very deep, sit off them, not press them. And I think what that creates for Brighton is a world where they're not going to have their build-up disrupted like Luton did or like Arsenal did effectively and really cause these crazy transition moments. There's going to be a lot of long, lengthy possessions that lead to meh output. That's been really the story of Brighton's season, is that their attack has fallen off, not their defense. Their defense is still top 6 in XG allowed. So I think that this total is a touch high at 3. I know Forest has goalkeeper problems galore, and that's been their biggest issue all year, but this total is a touch high.
Everton plus 0.5 at even money at Old Trafford against Manchester United. this match sets up really, really well for Everton. So what's been happening with Manchester United this season is that Erik ten Hag has basically conceded that his team can no longer control matches. So they have to play very transitionally and very end-to-end. It's not a bad thing to be a transition team, but it's bad when you want to play transitionally when your transition defense is very, very bad. United's trying to press from the front. They're not really be able to do that because Everton's just going to send long balls up there. They're going to have advantages winning headers on those second balls. So one of two things are going to happen. Either Everton are going to sit in their mid block, which they are elite at this season. They're top 5 in expected goals allowed, top 5 in big scoring chances allowed, and dare United to break them down when United doesn't have Rasmus Højlund, or they're going to get in a back and forth transition game with United where they are a better transition defense and a better transition offense. Everton also has a real distinct advantage on corners. They are the number 1 team off of corners in the Premier League this season, created well over 12 expected goals, 0.16 XG per corner, while United has conceded the most set piece opportunities in the Premier League, which is kind of crazy for a team sitting in the top half of the table, which just tells you how undisciplined they are defensively in terms of fouling teams in their own final thirds. So Everton has a ton of advantages here. They honestly should be a road favorite because of how much better they've been in terms of their underlying numbers. So it's the game of the year. I love Everton plus a half at even money.
Only this podcast would call Everton United the game of the year the same weekend of Liverpool Man City, which is the 2 current title betting favorites to win the Premier League. That will be the big one Sunday. We will be back on Monday. I'm sure we will work in some discussion about the Premier League title race into that episode, but that's also going to be a Champions League episode because we've got the second round of the second legs next week. Arsenal looks to turn a match against Porto. Inter is going to try to hold off at Atleti. Big Champions League week next week. And then we're heading into the final weekend before the break. So we're going to get Champions League, a break, Euro qualifiers. We're coming down the pike here toward the end of the season. Very exciting. Hopefully Lieboff is recovered from his Jurgen Klopp flu to be back with us for the Monday episode. Thanks to BJ for joining me. This has been Wondergoal, and see you guys Monday.